If you're into Dana White's Contender Series, if you're into MMA prospects, if you're into UFC prospects, this is the video for you. This is fighters that need to be on Dana White's Contender Series in 2023, and in general, just some of the best welterweights in the world that are not signed to a major promotion, and it could be readily signed by the UFC. Let's just get straight into it. I'm really excited about this video. I've got the wrong overlay. I've got my UFC Picks overlay going on there. My bad. The first one is Abduragimov. The Lazy King's actually got a fight on this weekend. If you really wanted to check it out on UFC Fight Pass, he takes on Rafael Heretic, upper weight class at 185 pounds, and it's going to be a tough fight for him, man. It's going to be very interesting. He's on a massive first round finish streak. He has expressed interest in signing for the UFC before. If he wins this fight, I really hope he just gets signed to the UFC. Worst case, you can put him on Dana White's Contender Series, maybe. He's from France as well, represents France, I guess, in a way, but he was born in Russia. But he does represent France, which is a big thing because we don't have many French fighters, do we? You know what I mean? Like, they put on the UFC Paris, France card. There weren't too many French fighters on the card. Let's start signing French fighters now. Maybe we get heaps of French fighters in Dana White's Contender Series and put on a France card later on in the year. The next one is Samanda Muradov. I'm going to make comparisons here to Khamzat Chimaev and Samanda Muradov. This guy is so good. He's 23 years old. He's probably the next big thing if the UFC can market him correctly. Massive potential on this guy. 23 years old. He was 5-0 and he beat a 10-0 opponent. He beat a 19-3 opponent. He beat an 18-4 opponent in the first round. Do I need to keep going? He's 23 years old. He's super dominant. Very dominant grappling and wrestling style. And he's pretty good on the feet too. And he's from Tajikistan, and Tajikistan fighters represent their fighters super heavy. And I'm going to say this now, Nurullo Aliyev is going to get so much support in UFC debut. Why not capitalize on that? Get Samanda Muradov in the UFC too. He fought on road to UFC. UFC knows exactly who he is. Dana White's Contender Series. UFC soon. Let's make it happen. Cedric Doumbé. Do we really need this to keep going? Dana White's Contender Series. Come on. Cedric Doumbé also really fumbled the bag. It wasn't Cedric Doumbé's fault, sorry. I'm going to say it was the UFC and the French Commission's fault, kind of, in a way. Cedric Doumbé was only 2-0, but he couldn't actually fight Darian Weeks because the French Commission wouldn't allow it because of Darian Weeks just being too experienced of a fighter. But Cedric Doumbé, man, we're talking about a Glory World Champion, a guy which we'll probably have compared to Alex Pereira, considering Alex Pereira's had such a good run. KOs and glory, you know what I mean, and just very incredible run that he went on, and now he's gone to MMA. It's time for UFC to capitalize on the Alex Pereira hype, sign a glory kickboxer, Cedric Doumbé from France again. You can put him in Paris, you could have him debut in Paris. I'm telling you, this is just a good idea. I'm too good. Another fighter that could debut in Paris is Basungwai Chamsadinov. He's 21 years old. He's been very dominant in his whole career for the most part, and he's fighting a 9-0 opponent once again this weekend on Ares FC 11 on UFC Fight Pass. You do not want to miss this card. It's going to be a good one. There's quite a few good prospects on the main card in my opinion. Maybe just pause the video and have a look-see, but it's on this weekend. Don't miss it. For Basungwai Chamsadinov, 21 years old, he will be 6-0. I think Dana White's Contender Series is a pretty suitable option for him. Magomedov, he's 10-0. I believe he's from Bahrain, or represents Bahrain, but he was born in Dagestan. 10-0, beaten some good guys. Mahir Magomedov twice. He was 18-1, 18-2, a 7-4, 4-0, 13-4 opponent. And early on in his career, he beat a 6-2 opponent when he was very inexperienced. And he also went to the IMMAF, WMMA Unified World Championships as well as an amateur. Great. Matt Viley. New Zealand, stand up. I'm from New Zealand. I represent New Zealand a little bit. I mean, I do because I'm just from New Zealand. Anyway, let's move on. That was awkward. Matt Viley. Let's get some more New Zealand fighters in the UFC. There's not really many. I'm going to name off the top of my head all the fighters in New Zealand. And am I going to get them all? I might miss them. Let's try. Dan Hooker. Brad Riddell. Luke Jamo. Is he even still in the UFC? Oh no, this is awkward now. Shane Young. And there's one more that I'm missing. Oh no. Kai Kara France, and I think there's one more again. Maybe you could say Israel Adesanya, Blood Diamond and all that, but yes, I'm definitely missing someone in there. I feel so sorry about that, but we're talking about Matt Viley. He hasn't really fought the best guys as of recent. He did lose to Takashi Sato, who got into the UFC and then got released from the UFC. But he's just been struggling to get fights. He beat Sean Redgrave and then will choke in the first round. He's from New Zealand. We need more New Zealand fighters in the UFC. Let's make it happen. Hyun Seol Kim, he's from South Korea. UFC knows exactly who this guy is. He fought on Road to UFC and he won by first round submission over John Adejar. And before that, he has beaten some pretty good opponents. 18-3, Frank Camacho, who ended up in the UFC somehow. Xiang Guk Cho as well, who was 7-1 at the time. Han Xiao Kim, he's 32 years old. He's not getting any younger. Ming Ding, he's from China. UFC is always trying to get into the Chinese regional scene or get into the Chinese market for MMA. And Ming Ding would be a pretty suitable fighter. He's 32-7, but he's only 28 years old. He's on a decent win streak right now as well, and he's had a pretty good run as of recent. And he's not really beaten the best guys, but he's beaten them all by finish. It'll be very interesting to see how he does do against the Dana White's Contender Series caliber opponent. But that's a cool fighter that I think would make a good splash in the UFC, especially with his experience as well. That's a lot of fights. Rolando Bedoya, 14-1, he's from Peru. Daniel Marcos just got signed off Dana White's Contender Series from Peru. And I think that's going to start a trend. I think we're going to see a lot more fighters from Peru coming up. You've got Claudio Puelles, who did get embarrassed by Dan Hooker, but was on a good run before that. Now, Daniel Marcos just got signed to the UFC through Dana White's Contender Series. He's from Peru. Rolando Bedoya is 14-1 from Peru, and he's beaten some tough guys on the way up, man. We're talking about 12-4, 8-4, 7-4, 17-6, 10-1 opponent. I believe this fight was actually going to be a very tough opponent as well, but it fell through. 13-5 would have been a good one, but it didn't happen. But Rolando Bedoya, good prospect from Peru and welterweight. Felix Klinkhammer, 8-0 opponent from Germany. He was meant to fight Gabriel Bonfim on Dana White's Contender Series last year, but he did withdraw, which is why Gabriel Bonfim ended up fighting Trey Waters. But he has beaten good guys in his career. He's undefeated as an amateur, undefeated as a pro. Would be a pretty good addition to the UFC roster, in my opinion. Stefano Paterno, he's from Italy. There's been rumours of potential fight cards taking place in Italy, but they just haven't really been able to make it really happen. Marvin Vittori, I guess, just isn't quite a big enough star yet to sell out an arena in Italy. I could be wrong about that, but if they truly are going to put on fight cards in Italy, you've got to have Italian fighters on the roster. So Stefano Paterno, 15-4 opponent. If he wins a Dana White's Contender Series, he's 16-4. Very good record. He hasn't really looked too great as of recent, but I think he would still be a very suitable addition to the UFC roster, especially to fight on an Italian card. The next one is Artur Sipenziak. He's 9-1. He's from Poland, but he is signed to KSW, which is a tough one because I do believe if he signed to KSW, he's on an exclusive contract, but he's still a good prospect nonetheless. He lost to Benoit Saint Denis, and that's his only loss, and since then he's been 2-0, 7-1, and just very good opponents. Maybe not a good pick by me to be on the list because he is signed to KSW, but we move on. Evan Kutz, he's from the USA, he's 15-5. He's got a fight coming up, which I think he should be able to win. 7-3 opponent. He's also beaten pretty good opponents since then, all finished them all. Has only lost recently since 2019 has been over Johan Lanes, and his loss before that was a split decision. He's been on an incredible run, beating Ramiz Brahimaj in the UFC, 8-0 opponent as well, and he's just, I think he's ready. I think it's time for UFC maybe, or Dana White's Contender Series for Evan Kutz. The next one on the list is Chris Brown. He's got a 10-4 record, but this guy had such a good 2022. You can't ignore it. He beat a 5-0 opponent and also a 6-0 Alfonso Leiva, and he beat him in the first round to make Alfonso Leiva not look that great. And even then, before that, he fought Carlos Leo, split decision, and Carlos Leo, I believe, went on to have a pretty solid run in PFL. You know, he beat Ray Cooper III. He lost to Sada Busai, but Sada Busai ended up winning the whole thing. And yeah, I think Chris Brown would be a very good addition to Dana White's Contender Series, as well as Logan Urban, who's been on Dana White's Contender Series before. Got knocked out within the first minute by Josh Quinlan, but then Josh Quinlan did pop for some type of PED, I believe, so that is why that fight didn't happen. He tested positive for a PED, so can't hold that against Logan Urban too much, really. He's got a pretty tough fight coming up, but if he does win that, I think he would be pretty solid on his way to Dana White's Contender Series. Joseph Luciano, he's from Australia. He's fighting Caleb Rideout. The winner of that fight, I think, should go on Dana White's Contender Series. We do need more Australian fighters, and Australian fighters are making a pretty good name for themselves. And Caleb Rideout versus Joseph Luciano should be a good prospect matchup. And Rideout himself is a good prospect, but I do think Luciano might be able to win that one. I believe this fight is actually on the same weekend as UFC 284, which is pretty cool. Same sort of story. He's from Italy, Walter Pugliese. Also could be a pretty marketable fighter, just because he looks super scary. You know, he's got tattoos all over his face. He's got a skull on his stomach. Pretty scary dude, not gonna lie. He's also had experience in Bellator, knocked down a guy in 7 seconds. Hasn't really fought the best guys. I believe he's actually meant to fight in Bellator against Welterweights. So maybe this is just a really dumb pick by me. But I don't think he's signed an exclusive contract to Bellator. So maybe UFC could scoop in and take him for Dana White's Contender Series. Yan Jung is 8-2-1. He's 32 years old. He's on a somewhat decent streak, a 2-fight win streak over an undefeated opponent recently. UFC needs more South Korean fighters. They tried to put on an event in South Korea. Unfortunately, the Korean Zombie got injured, and they just didn't really have that many South Korean fighters to fill up the card. So let's just get a little bit more. Yan Jung could be that guy, and so could Han Seol Kim from earlier in the video. Adam Cullen, 6-0. He's from England. He's 24 years old. He's fought pretty good guys, and he's beaten them all in the first round, which is what you like to see. You know what I mean? You like to see people dominating guys. Maybe he hasn't taken that step up in competition that he needs to maybe prove himself to beat UFC level, but he still beat 4-0 opponent, 5-1 opponent, 5-2, 3-1, 3-2, sorry, all in the first round, which is very, very impressive. Only 24 years old as well. He's only going to improve. Magomed Sagid Alibekov is 16-3. I believe he's an older guy though, because he has made his UFC, a professional debut, in 2011, but he's got a pretty good record, 16-3. Recently beat the 20-3 opponent Alexei Kunchenko, who's a good fighter himself. But yeah, I think he could be a pretty good addition to Dana White's Contender Series. Aldarov's a pretty good fighter. You see this guy, I feel like Aldarov is like a coach of Muhammad Mokaev. Since I'm at the end of the video, I can maybe get away with this. Let's have a look. See, Muhammad Mokaev, you go to him, head coach, and Aldarov is on that list. So he's got some sort of connection to Muhammad Mokaev, I think. And yeah, he's 31 years old. He's 14-1 himself. His only loss is to Khabib Nurmagomedov in 2009. And since then, he's gone on a pretty good win streak. Just beat a 7-0 guy. Munir Laziz, actually, who's in the UFC. Brian Hoy, who you see kind of bouncing around the regional scene quite a bit. Dennis Mahou's 18-0. It's still Eldorado of Dana White's Contender Series UFC signing would be good. Kamal Magomedov is 10-0. He's the last fighter on the list. He's signed to Brave CF right now. He's beaten some pretty good guys. He's beaten a lot of guys by finish as well. All of his wins are by finish, 6 by submissions, 4 by KO. That's my whole list. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you've got anyone to add to the list, and I'll see you in the next one.